Now we're moving on to a section on filming the extras, and I'll preface this by saying that several sections back we talked about in-camera editing and why it was important. We talked about not rolling on things like cheerleaders and the band and downtime between plays. You might be saying to yourself, well, what's the difference here? Well, things like penalties, which we're going to talk about in this video, and things like the scoreboard and the down markers coming up are things that communicate information about the game, and therefore they are important to film. Let's start here with penalties and take a really good example. Let's say a team is at their own 40-yard line, as you see here, and they hit a big run that takes them all the way to the goal line on the other side of the field. But there's a penalty which brings them back near the spot of the foul. If you don't film the referee making the call, somebody who's watching it might see the play end at the goal line and then wonder why the offense is starting the next play at the 30-yard line. It won't make any sense. You must communicate the penalty call. So a couple of factors in how we're going to handle this. The first one is to pay attention. Just like when we talked about punts and we said pay attention to when it's fourth down, we want to pay attention to when there is a penalty. You should be able to see the yellow flag get thrown on the field. Sometimes you'll get lucky if there's an announcer at the game. He may make a call and say,
"Pass incomplete, flag on the play."
But either way, pay attention to when there's a penalty. Then we're always going to look for the referee in the white hat. He's the one that makes the call. Now, he may be ready to make it immediately, so you're going to have to eyeball this, move your head away from the camera and find where he is, and then go get him with the camera. But we're not going to roll on him until he's ready to make the call. And we're going to know that he's ready to make the call when he raises his hand in the air. We're going to film him making the call. 3 or 4 seconds, we're going to cut. If he has a conference with his partners beforehand, the other referees, we do not want to film that. We never film the conference between the referees, we only film the call. The conference with the other referees would be dead time that we would fast forward through. So as far as in-camera editing goes, we're not going to shoot that. Now, let's say that there's a penalty before the ball is hiked. Let's say a team jumps offside. What we don't want to do is cut immediately. This is a great opportunity to do some really nice in-camera editing and have things be smooth. So let's take a look at that. Here's a play where the team jumps off sides right away. We all know it's a penalty, and you can see what the camera's doing. He's immediately going behind the quarterback. That's where the referee with the white hat is. He's going to make the call, and that's really all you need to film. So now you have a shot that's all-inclusive. In one shot, you have pre-snap, you have a penalty, and you move over and film the referee, and then that play ends. So that's really the best way to handle penalties that happen before the snap. Move the camera over and pick up the ref right away. What about what happens if you miss the referee's call? If a play is complete and you turn the camera off and you don't realize there's a penalty flag and you miss the referee's call, what can you do? Well, you have to somehow visually communicate to the audience that there was a penalty. I would suggest looking to see if the flag is still on the ground. If so, you can get a really nice tight close-up of it. If that doesn't work, the referee will pick up the ball and usually march the team back to 10 yards for the penalty. You can film the referee and some of the players around him walking backwards 10 yards. That would communicate that there was a penalty. Another way to handle it would be to film the down markers, and we're going to talk about this in the next section, but the down marker will tell us that the play has not changed. For example, if it was first down and there was a penalty, it normally would be second down, but if you show us that it's still first down, that will communicate that there must have been a penalty. So there's a variety of ways to handle it, but again, you want to try to pay attention to what's going on so that you don't miss the plays and don't have to find a creative way to communicate it. And that's really it for penalties. We can quickly recap the 4 major points. Number 1 is to pay attention for a penalty flag and know when there's one coming so that you can film the call. Number 2, find the referee with the white hat. Number 3, roll just before he makes the call. Don't film the referee's conference. And number 4, on a penalty that takes place before the snap, don't cut, just pan directly to the ref to make the call. Now, if the ref is delayed in making the call, if you pan over and he doesn't make the call right away, you might consider cutting. But you don't want to cut and then realize 5 seconds later that you have to roll. So this is a situation where you may just want to keep it rolling till he makes the call. Use the referee's body language to see if you think he's going to start the call any second. So filming referees is important. Make sure you include it in the game because it gives the audience information. And let's move on now to the next section. When you watch an NFL or a college game on television, you'll notice that the scoreboard is always on the screen. It's become a vital part of watching football to know the status of what's going on at all times. Well, you as a cameraman at a football game do not have the luxury of putting the scoreboard on the screen constantly in the bottom corner, but you do have the ability to show the audience the scoreboard at appropriate moments to communicate information. And that's what we're going to do. So as we look at shooting the scoreboard, we're going to look at a couple of different rules. And the first one, of course, is to film the scoreboard at the end of every quarter. First quarter, halftime, third quarter, and end of game. It lets the audience know that the quarter has ended, that we've switched sides, because the clock will either be at 0 or it might have been reset to 12 minutes for the next quarter. It's a good visual clue. It also updates us as to what the score is at this point in time. So rule 1, film it at the end of every quarter. Rule 2, fairly obvious. We want to film the scoreboard at the end of every score. So after a field goal, team kicks a field goal, it's 3-0. We film the scoreboard to show us that. When a team scores a touchdown, though, we're only going to film the scoreboard after the extra point. In other words, team scores a touchdown, don't film 6-0, and then the extra point gets kicked, and then you film 7-0. Film the touchdown, wait for the extra point, and then film the scoreboard at 7-0. If the extra point is missed or blocked, it doesn't matter because you'll film the scoreboard at 6-0 at that point. The other big one that we like to use is every change of possession. Every time the ball goes from one team to another, we're going to shoot the scoreboard. So after a punt, for example, team punts the ball, gives up possession, we film the scoreboard, and it's a way of saying, okay, this is where we are in the game, the next team's going to get the ball. This also happens after a turnover. So if a team fumbles the ball and the other team, the defense, recovers, we'll film the scoreboard because it tells the audience again, here we are at this point of the game, here's the time on the clock when the offense is starting their drive, and it's an important way to communicate that something has happened, something has changed. So the 3 big ones are at the end of every quarter, after a score, and when the ball changes possession. Okay? One word of caution about filming the scoreboard after a touchdown or a field goal. Make sure that the scoreboard operator has updated the score before you film it. So if you're at a game and it's 7-7, and a team kicks a field goal and it's 10-7, if you just shoot the scoreboard before they change it to 10, people are going to think it's still 7-7. It's going to cause some confusion. So make sure you wait for the scoreboard operator to change the score. Now sometimes he doesn't. I've been at games where I'm pointing the camera at the scoreboard, waiting for him to change it so that I can roll for 3 or 4 seconds, and it doesn't change. And if that happens, don't film it. Only film the scoreboard if it's correct. If they don't get it changed before the next play, maybe you film the kickoff and then come back and film the scoreboard. But we really want to make sure that we get an accurate score. Now, what if the scoreboard's not working? This has happened several times. You're dealing with high schools or youth football leagues and there's no scoreboard. Well, guess what? We're going to film it anyway most of the time. And the reason that we do that is because even though it's not working, if you don't film it, the audience is going to wonder why you're not filming it. What's going on in the game? So by filming it, you're telling the audience 2 things. You're telling them that it's not working, but you're also giving them a visual clue that something has changed. So if it's the end of the quarter, you can always film it. Film it blank. It's a visual clue to say change of possession, end of quarter. Another way to handle the end of a quarter if you don't want to film the scoreboard is that you can take a shot of the teams changing sides. What I like to do is zoom out wide. That is a visual clue that communicates that the quarter has changed. They're flipping sides. Even though the audience might be able to understand that a team that was going this way is suddenly now going this way, it's always nice to have that visual clue. So to sum it all up, the best way to remember when to film the scoreboard, besides the obvious rules, is to think about yourself watching this game as you've edited it in the camera. If there's any point in the game where you want to know what the scoreboard says, that's when you should film it. This also applies to a team running a 2-minute drill at the end of the game. You might film the scoreboard at the end of every play to let us know that there's 1:10 left, and then there's 53 seconds left, and then there's 35 seconds left, and so on. So you can film the scoreboard when you feel it's appropriate that the audience wants to know what's going on. But otherwise, follow the main rules, and there's no problem anybody will have with the way that you communicate information about the game to them. Good luck with that, and let's move on to the next section on down markers.